Hi, Amy Hazel here of Deschutes Angler Fly Shop. The fly I'm going to tie for you today is a summer steelhead pattern called the Addison. This is an original pattern by Andrew Dutterer, former fly shop manager of Deschutes Angler. I'll be tying this fly today on my Regal vise. It's a vise that I've had for nearly 20 years, and I absolutely love this vise. The recipe calls for a bronze hook, so I've chosen an Alec Jackson hook, and I'm using 8/0 uni thread in black. As you can see here, start tying on the back of the hook, and I'm tying just above the hook point, tying in my thread. I'm then going to use some Danville size 12 mylar tinsel to make a tag, which will be behind the tail. The tag is gold, though the tinsel is gold and silver, as you can see here. And when I tie the tinsel in, I tie the silver side up because I'm going to wrap forward and the gold side will be visible. So here I am tying down the tinsel, and then I'll wrap it forward. I make about 4 or 5 wraps forward with the tinsel, keeping it nice and flat. And then I'll tie it off and clip it off so that I can then start tying in my tail. The tail material is a golden pheasant crest material, sometimes called a topping, and the golden pheasant crest has a nice curvature to it, which makes for an elegant tail that sweeps upward. So I choose the feather based on that curvature and also based on the length. I want the tail to extend above the bend of the hook but not be too long. And so it takes a little bit to position the tail to get it just right. I've sped up the process a little bit here, but the tail sometimes on the crest, the crest is sometimes a little bit twisted. So I tie it in loosely, make sure that I get that nice upward sloping look to the tail, and adjust it a little bit, tie it in a little bit more. And in fact, sometimes I'll even pull a little bit on the butt end just to make it shorter, just to make it absolutely where I want it to be. I'm now tying the mylar tinsel back in because that is going to serve as my ribbing. And I'm going to tie that mylar tinsel in with the silver up, and I'm going to tie my thread forward just to the point behind what we call the return eye of the hook. The return eye of the hook is this part here where the metal comes back that has formed the eye. And the important thing is that the return eye of the hook is the place that I'm going to put my wing as I tie my wing in reverse style. Now the wing material that I use on this fly is polar bear, though you could use bucktail, you could use Arctic foxtail. There's a lot of other materials that work well, but I prefer polar bear for its sheen and its ease of use. By ease of use, I mean that polar bear is actually a hollow hair, and so when I tie it in on my fly, even though I've got a nice big fluffy wing, the butts compress quite nicely so that I can achieve my goal of getting a nice small head on the fly. So what I'm doing here is I've cut the polar bear from the skin, and I'm stripping out the shorter hairs so that I can stack this hair in a stacker. This is a hair stacker that I'm using here. So you can see it comes apart. So you put the hair into the stacker, tips down. Do this right here. Actually, I'm going to move it around to the other side so you can see better, but I'm putting the hair in here, tips down. Sometimes you have to swirl it around to make sure all the tips get in there. And once you get the tips into the stacker, you simply tap it down on a hard table or a hard surface. Bop, bop, bop as hard as you can, and that will get the hairs all to the points will all be equal. As I pull the top end of the stacker away, just the points of the hair are exposed. So now I have nicely, neatly stacked polar bear hair so that my wing is even and not a whole bunch of different lengths at the tips. So I actually restacked it. It wasn't perfect that time. I put it back in the stacker, which you can do, and then I pulled it out again. Now what I'm doing here is I'm measuring the length of the wing. I'm actually going to tie the wing in so the tips are pointed forward over the eye of the fly. But I want to measure the wing because I want the wing to come down to about halfway down the length of the tail. That's where I ideally want the tips to be once I fold the wing backward. So I lay the wing in here after having measured along the shank exactly where I should tie it in. And then I'm going to bend the hair backwards to make sure that the length of the wing is not too long, not too short. I want that wing to come halfway down the length of the tail, and this looks perfect. And as I'm tying in this wing, the wing is sitting down in that return eye of the hook. I also am now going to tie the butt end of the wing all the way down the shank of the hook before I put the dubbing on. That way I have a nice even body. There isn't any kind of a lump as I put my dubbing in. So I'm dubbing with some claret dubbing. This is a STS dubbing. There we go. Trilobal dubbing claret. And I'll do the dubbing pretty quickly. I think most people who are watching this video understand how to dub, so we'll just get this part out of the way. We're just rolling the dubbing onto the thread and wrapping it forward and trying to keep the body fairly even. We want a nice even body. We don't want any lumps or bumps. And I finish up the dubbing leaving a little gap, which is where I'm going to wrap my hackle. And so now I'm going to wrap forward the gold ribbing. And this Danville Mylar is size 12 because I'm tying on a size 3 hook. If I were tying on a size 5 hook or a 7, I might shift it down to 14. The hackle that I'm going to put in is just a regular saddle hackle. I'm looking for a piece that's got a little bit of webbiness to it, and I'm going to lay that piece out so that I can make sure that the hackle's going to come back about 2/3 of the way down the body at the longest, usually halfway down the body to 2/3 of the way down the body. It's a personal preference on how long your hackle is. I like it to not be all the way down the body. I want the body somewhat exposed. So I tie the hackle in here by the tip, and I fold the tip back right here, tie it down, and trim it off. That way I won't pull it out as I'm wrapping the hackle forward. And as I wrap the hackle forward, I sweep the fibers forward. You can see the shorter fibers here are going in first, and then as I wrap forward, because I've tied it in by the tip, the hackle fibers are going to get longer and longer as I wrap forward. So I'm doing all this behind the wing because I'll be folding the wing back over the hackle. So I finished wrapping in the saddle hackle here, make a few turns with the thread, trim it off, and now the really important part of tying in the wing reverse style is to fold that wing back and to pinch it down, pull it back a little bit, but pinch it down, because this is where you're forming the head by wrapping the thread back. You want to get that thread wrapped on there tightly. But here's the goocher, is when you're tying with 8/0 thread, you want to keep it flat by unspinning it. But you see here I'm pulling on that really tightly because I want a nice small head. I'm trying to compress the wing, and boof, I break the thread right there. So I'm going to fix that problem. I'm going to wrap the thread back on. I'm going to take the time to trim the 2 butt ends of the thread right now. And I'm going to continue wrapping that as tightly as I can without breaking the thread to form a nice, beautiful, tight head. Having a small head on a steelhead fly is really important to me. I'm going to whip finish it here a couple times with my fingers. You can, of course, use a whip finishing tool. I prefer to use my fingers. I'll make a few half hitches here, put a pair of scissors in there, slide it up, and then I'll repeat the process, and then I'm going to put a little bit of head cement on the fly, and we have the completed fly, which is the Addison by Andrew Dutterer. This is a fantastic steelhead fly for summer run steelhead on all rivers, but particularly on the Deschutes. The hardest hull head cement right here leaves a nice shiny little head, and we love this fly. It's named after the street that Wrigley Field is on, and that's because Andrew is a huge Chicago Cubs fan. So get out there and fish the Addison and enjoy this fly.